It's truly an honor to have the opportunity to introduce Jacob tonight at this pivotal moment in his academic journey. I've had the good fortune of working closely with him during his time at Antioch through many spiritual studies classes, depth psychology classes, and independent studies. I've been continually inspired by his mercurial intellect, academic vigor, compelling creativity, psychic fortitude, and compassionate heart. Jacob's passion for understanding and healing the ruptures in the soul of the world is noble, to say the least. Jacob, through his personal experiences and penchant for the depths, has been able to see and imagine a larger vision that breaks through the hobbles and limitations of the Western psychological model. In the name of a more holistic approach to mental and emotional health, Jacob allows for what we have denied to our detriment. Embracing the unexpected, the paradoxical, the metaphorical, the mythical, and most importantly, the wounded places, Jacob navigates and brings much needed circulation to the vastness and mystery of the unconscious. He returns with the alchemical gold, a healing salve so desperately needed in our time. He is expressing these gifts in his art, his writing, and current work with clients. Jacob is a paradigm shifter, a shape shifter, and a rule breaker, when a new way of being and seeing the world is crucial to our very survival. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Jacob.
Cece, thank you so much. How are we all doing tonight? Welcome. Yes, yes, I'm so glad. I'm so happy to see everyone. Let me get this going here. What? The one thing I'm not talented at is navigating how to share my screen, apparently. So give me just a sec. There we go. Okay. Perfect. Now I can get started for real. So welcome, and thank you again, Cece, for the introduction. This is so exciting. And it's wondrous to see so many familiar faces out there. Well, in virtual reality, at least. It goes without saying, but by the grace of so many of the souls present tonight, that I'm here. And for anyone that doesn't know me, yes, my name is Jacob Cookston. And I'm going to share with you my dream of the underworld. Tonight, I will be your trickster and guide, poet and heretic, lunatic in that I caress the blurry, soft lines of the moonlight. Psyche being soul, I'm a student of the soul. Psychology. Psychology implies the act of traveling the soul's labyrinth, and we can never go deep enough. Mythology is vitally entangled to psychology. So, will you take my hand as we meet Hades? The god of the underworld, the god of the unseen, the wealthy one, the giver of nourishment to the soul. The root of the word death is hider, hiding like the taboo. It's not an absence, but a hidden presence, a blind spot, an invisible fullness. I'm speaking about humanizing the human experience. It's getting complicated now. Rules, I love rules. And like Cece said, I like making them and breaking them. In the words of my dear friend and mentor, the founder of contextual conceptual therapy, Fredric, don't believe anything I say. Don't disbelieve anything I say. Invite the imagination, the mythologisms, motifs, and patternings. You find them the world over. We find them in art, literature, scientific theories, and theology. In the dreams and visions of the insane, in you, of you, open that door in your mind and witness the psychological field. Let go of the literal and bear witness to the psyche. Let us invite the soul into the room. And I can't think of a better way to end the night. Story time with Jake. A deeply personal story, by the way, one that I often don't speak so candidly, but there's a magic in storytelling. We heard about that with Taylor a little bit, truth-telling, myth-making. So better buckle your seatbelt, Dorothy, because Kansas is going bye-bye. And it's not all grim and foreboding. There's a beautiful absurdity. No right and wrong, all ravens are black, Achilles and the tortoise. Metaphor reigns sovereign. Rivers flow backwards towards the source. And what doesn't make sense makes the most sense when you laugh in the face of the abyss, face death without dread, and recognize the hope inherent in hopelessness. For every light, a shadow, and in every person, a darkness, a mercurial depth. When I look back on my life's journey, I'm faced with dual realities. It's like hosting the memories of a ghost. Yet the ghost is me. I see from inside the eyelids of another. I know their thoughts, speak their words. They are me and yet not me. The disembodied story of evolving images, a call from the depths and an echo from the descent once made. For I'm not implying that my present authenticity comes from rising above. The dismemberment found in the descent into soul, that is my truth. A truth from which I will never recover. The wholeness of false ego worship, forever sullied in the cauldron of personal hell. So here we go. Once upon a time, lived a fair-haired prince, as fashioned through outward vanity. Yeah, I used to have great hair. I do miss that part. But anyways, by name indeed did I preserve myself a fashionable wall of egotistical will. Let me think. It's beautiful, dangerous, chaotic, in control. The rules were mine to play. So how would you describe the old me? Oh, Jake, he's nice, but he's got a dark side, a dark abyss, a dangerous hunger, a gaping maw of despair hidden beneath the surface. For I loved myself more than anything, and I hated myself completely. When I wore out, I shifted forms. I changed masks. I became more of an idea instead of a person. I lost the me that was hosted at the root. Nobody trusted me because I lied, especially to myself, so much that the lie became the truth. The mask was all that I knew. I could not see the real me, for the facade was the only me left. And the image in the mirror was haunting. I harbored a monster that refused to die. By the way, the words on the screen, this one and the next few, I lifted from pages of old journals. And the curious thing about soul pain, the sense of wrongness prevails, and yet it remains unnamed, unseen. I could not run from myself, especially in the self-righteous narcissism. I looked everywhere, outward in my progression. I drank copious amounts of alcohol to numb and fill the void. I nourished toxic relationships that reflected my own insecurity. I objectified pain and became complicit in trauma, reckless, cruel even. To look inside was to witness monstrosity. And I reached a point from which I made a pact with myself. If I was not happy in 1 year to the day, I would kill myself. I needed to die to live. That was the most logical thing to do, die. Or maybe I was too afraid of the dark to live in the light. In between, no escape, totally lost. The loneliness I feared so much crept closer and tighter, wrapping me in visions of the underworld. The presumed pathology? The list is long. Psychotic, depressed, bipolar, lonely, selfish, alcoholic, delinquent, self-destructive, liar, manipulator, all extensions of the soul ache. Psych ache. I lost myself. I was not me. And 1 year to the day, not me finally answered that call to the underworld, mistakenly literal. On October 13th, 2015, I died, keeping to my promise. The words on the screen written on the last page of my journal. But by some miracle, even without breath, cold, total organ failure, my heart never quite stopped beating. My fatefully weird heart still beating in my chest. I had survived. I'd failed. Next comes a twist of fate. I stepped into an office on the shores of South Lake Union, a chaotic space filled with art, toys, models. I sat on the floor in front of a smart-looking mustachioed man. With a glint in his eye, he stared deep into me, saw me. He told me that my brush with death was a gift. He told me I was a teacher, told me he loved me, the true me, not the false me. He told me, I'm going to help you kill yourself. Wasn't expecting that now, were you? Because I sure wasn't. Thank you, Fredric and Dr. Benison. Meeting you changed my fate. Because I did indeed need to die. A metaphorical death, not a physical death. And thus I encountered a great mystery. It was time to answer the call to the depths of the underworld. I ventured forth into the realm of the dead with Fredric as my mercurial guide. And on the banks of the Styx, the river of hate where the gods seal their pacts, here we set the stage for a new Faustian bargain. Not with the forces of darkness, but with the forces of light. The world upside down. You trade away the materialism, the reduction and rational order. Trade the violence of light for a mystery, a playfulness. Here the rational breaks down and becomes a mystery of death that is not simply literal, but also symbolic, metaphorical, weird, paradoxical. Only myth, in its sweeping ability to constellate an array of contradictory meaning, has the power to awaken, within the private and particular moment, an immediate sense of what matters most. That's what I'm talking about. What matters most, meaningful, moving, healing, found in the wound itself. It just occurred to me why the Grim Reaper is so popular in myths and cultures around the world, because people are just dying to meet him. But gallows humor aside, one cannot deny the universal call to the great mystery of the underworld. The descent myth exists universally. Even here in the Western cultural context, here in the Christian myth, we have the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. We have Dante's Divine Comedy, not to mention the classical Greeks, the Romans, Norse, and beyond. Our solar orientation in the West focuses so strongly on the heroic. But what I'm implying today is that in that particular moment, what may be the most important may not be good or pleasant at all. Could it be that it is the dissolution instead of the overcoming that is so vital? Could it be that the underworld is a mythological way of describing a psychological cosmos? Now, to mythic consciousness, the persons of the imagination are real. I think that's a quote from James Hillman. This particular painting on the screen now It speaks to me for some reason. It's haunting. It's called Souls on the Bank of the Acheron by Adolf Hermy Herschel, which, by the way, it's huge. It weighs in something like 7 by 11 feet, which is besides the point. But here we see Hermes. We see the mercurial trickster on the banks of the river of sorrow. We witness a threshold, an alchemical connection with the god of the unseen, for mythologically, Hermes wore the crown of Hades, granting the wearer invisibility. The messenger, the trickster, moving between the lands of the living and the dead, neither here nor there, as Fredric might say, neither here nor there as one trapped in between, the logical fallacy of suicidal ideation. To face our mortality requires the richness of imagination. The dark parts of us, they are our individuality. That's our unseen treasure. Gods are the metaphors of archetypal patterns of behavior. Our pathologies too. In that, they become real, a psychic reality, real but not material. You feel depression, you know it, but you cannot hold it. Love is the same. Access to the unconscious is only in darkness. Jung called this descent to darkness the Nikia. And on the other side of the threshold, life ceases and absolute values no longer exist. So I'm going to break down a couple things. First off, the psyche speaks in images, symbols. Imaginal, as in referring to images, is the substance of the psyche. Psyche being soul, soul being fantasy, fantasy, imagination, imagination being perception, truth. The truth thus can only be poetic, paradoxical. Paradoxical images, that is the nature of the soul. Thusly, psychology's dealings with the psyche are not just a thinking problem. I want to mention briefly that I'm not discounting the miracles of modern medicine or the logics of research. Instead, I'm opening a conversation with the elephant in the room. Remember to be curious. Utilize the tools of the imagination. The question is the mechanical one-sidedness of science reinforcing the modern rejection of soul? Curiously, there's a dream at the beginning of every scientific theory. Also, personally, I'm wary of theological dogma as it's crystallized. It holds power over the experience. I am curious about the psychological experience, the living experience, the humanities apparent in the psychological, even if the modern context puts the arts second to science. There's another paradox in there somewhere. What if that disconnect from the imaginal transcendent, I can't even say it, that disconnect between the psyche is what hides, veiled behind the mental health epidemic? Very curious. It's in the light of the underworld that we experience visions of death, nightmares, and suicidal thoughts. Here, psyche reigns supreme. Thus, suicide becomes a measure, well, it's not a measure of ending in medical terms, but a meaning in soul. So I'll say that again. What suicide means in the soul. And I brace to face the collective crushing values, the obsessive requirement of prolonging life, because to open your imagination to this thought goes against the collective consciousness. The practical matter of suicide prevention warrants a little bit of a moniker of prejudice, for prevention is an autopsy from the outside in, an investigation that loses the interiority of the experience. In the words of James Hillman, when death is viewed from the outside, what place remains for the individual soul and its experience with death? To understand soul, we cannot turn to science for a description. its meaning is best given by its context. The word soul, therefore, is a symbol, and symbols aren't completely within our control. There's a purposeful ambiguity to a symbol. The root metaphor of all thought is also symbolic. Symbols speak in a language similar to poetry and art. To understand suicide, for example, one cannot proceed with the attitude of prevention. To prevent physical death, one must move to where it makes sense, the underworld, because it makes sense to the person trying to kill themselves. It made sense to me. To see in the dark requires a mirror to see the dream reflected. For when you're lost in it, you cannot see out. But not to mistake the inside for the outside, vice versa. And only in dreams can we experience death and remain materially alive. The dread and resistance which every natural human being experiences when it comes to delving too deeply into himself is at bottom the fear of the journey to Hades. And that's from C.G. Jung. So how are you all doing out there? Enjoying this exchange of non-literal subjects, maybe? Woo, it's all metaphor, all metaphor. Metaphor being more than just a rhetoric tool. It actually speaks to how we think and experience the world. Think back to the language I conjured out of those old journals. I was already experiencing death while alive. In the living, it looks like no hope, no future, no possibility. It makes me think of the frozen lake of hell in the imagination of Dante. Midway upon the journey of our life, I found myself within a forest dark, for the straightforward pathways had been lost. So bitter is it, death is little more. It's a little dramatic for my tastes, but thank you, Dante, for that. So back to metaphors. Metaphors are entities we live by, entities that constitute the way we think, feel, and experience our lives and actions. They connect us to the formation of ideologies. Psychologically, it appears vital that we understand concepts using other concepts. Metaphor in the context of the underworld. It's a vehicle for change. Metaphor is everywhere. We just don't really notice it anymore. So let me circle back to, well, me. This symposium is a celebration of how far I've come. I returned to school to finish what I started. Something must end to begin anew. My art history degree dissolved into psychology, and I've spent the last 3 years building an academic context to lived experience, my lived experience. Because of my underworld journey, I have changed completely, and yet I'm more myself than ever before. Depth psychology found me. It found me. It's my fate. The work I'm doing academically and with clients now, I've been living my whole life, even if I couldn't see it. My mom told me that I came back with something from the other side. That something, that transformation, it's an alchemical imagination. And if it worked for me, it can work for others. By descending into the imaginal psyche, the underworld journey, I changed my living myth. I unmuddled the confusion between inner and outer. I unveiled the psychic reality concretized in my waking distortions. I was acting concretely on my death fantasies, and my fantasies were altering my perception of the material world. That loneliness I felt, for example, it was excruciatingly real to me. What about my loving family, friends, status, material? But when the inside becomes outside, well, you already know. That, once again, is the danger of the reductive. Logic cannot outsmart poetic license. Now, seriously, this is more of the fun part, at least for me, alchemy. I'm going to add just another angle to the imagination of the underworld. So, alchemists, seriously, like those stinky old wizards that turn lead into gold? This presentation's taking a turn. Yes, but not exactly. Alchemical psychology, real passion here. And I could do a whole nother presentation after this, so I hope you're all ready to stay here for a few more hours. But I'll be quick for those who aren't familiar. It's a huge misconception to attribute alchemy to the old wizard thing. Although alchemists were more like mystics than chemists. It's also depressing to attribute alchemy to simply a precursor to modern chemistry. Modern chemistry kept the mechanical, the reductive, but it's totally missing the spirit, that imagination, the psyche that I've been talking about so much here tonight. You see, the mission of the alchemist was to enlighten not only the human soul, but the soul of the material world as well. And alchemical material is monstrously arcane, but there's a profound psychological intention behind the obscurity. The stuff is absurd, it's comical at times. But I do find it's pretty hard to outsmart a fire-breathing, two-headed homunculus baby. So the move away from the literal creates room for that as if, the materialization of the psyche and the psychization of matter. Remember, the call to the underworld is a movement towards psyche, towards the interiority of the experience that is not rational, but operates by its own logic in psychic reality. This is the therapeutic effect. Alchemy forces metaphor upon us, James Hillman. Arguably, the most important stage in alchemy's great work aligns thematically with Hades, the dissolution stage, also known as the blackening, the negrito, putrefactio, mortificatio. This is the dismemberment on the hero's journey, the death experience, the color of not color, the me but not me, dark and light, fullness and emptiness at the same time. Therefore, alchemy recognizes the fundamental attunement to inner darkness. And in the words of Lao Tzu, mystery and manifestation arise from the same source. The source is called darkness, darkness within darkness, the gateways to all understanding. It is in that darkest darkness that we witness the birth of the alchemical opus, the philosopher's stone, the stone that's not a stone, soul and matter united, being and becoming at the same time. One must first be separated to be unified. By psychologically disturbing the attachment to suffering requires rotting, putrefaction. The rot breaks down attachment. It nourishes fertile ground. And thus, at this death stage of the alchemical process, while maybe the most negative imagery presents itself, it also leads to highly positive outcomes. This being growth, resurrection, rebirth. I'm talking about psychological change. The darkness breaks the paradigm. It dissolves what we rely on as real and clear. I'm talking about the dissolution of the attachments of whatever has been taken as true. For someone like me, what was true and real was very dangerous. Psychosis presents similarly as a distortion. But remember, that's from the outside looking in. Delusion is true in the individual experiencing it. Recognizing the illusion does not unearth the meaning within. We fear what we most desire and desire what we most fear. Now get ready for a mind melter. As you've probably figured out by now, I'm recognizing the importance of the darkness, not necessarily proposing a way to rise above it. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Some more Jung for you. We spend so much time trying to escape the uncomfortable places that it's easy to forget the meaningful purpose found in the subterranean realms. Death is a mystery, begins and ends in a mystery. A paradox of images, death and new life, light and dark, presence and absence. The unknowing is key here. Hades is the king of the unseen. The foundation of transformation is the unknown, hidden in the shadows. To bring it into the light is a paradox. When we try to know the dream of the underworld, we're missing the point. The symptoms we're trying so hard to escape from, they make us. We risk losing the experience by transforming it into something rationalized, materialized. But darkness is the capital O, other, that likewise shines. It does not shed light, but it has its own luminous and numinous nature. It appears in the fringes of consciousness. The anti-light, the black sun that burns all to ash. The alchemists of yore recognized this luminous dark in their inward searching experiments with soul. So there it is. The inner darkness of the underworld, the mystery of the shadow of death. They are the necessary opposite to the heliotropic obsession with light. Transformation is possible when inviting the unwanted. I mean, the Grim Reaper is never invited to birthday parties after all. But by shedding the materialist viewpoint, only then can Hades reveal itself in all the possibilities. So I think it's time to stop ignoring those darker parts of us. I think it's time to pause and bask in the luminous dark. It's a tale as old as time. My connection to the underworld is fundamental on my mythic pathway to bliss. The wholeness requires pain, healing in the wounding. Darkness is not the antithesis of light. I see darkness as a possibility, that if one can endure it, what dreams may come. As I leave you, please recognize the dark night of the soul, the essence of meaninglessness, not just in the individual like me or you, but the dark night of the world soul, the collective reduction of meaning in the modern world, the ecological destruction, epidemics of disease, addiction, and suicide. Could it be in this dark night that we are witnessing the suicide of our Mother Earth? Some might think I'm mad. But if something doesn't work, invite back that imagination. Face death without dread. Witness the paradoxical light in a world filled with darkness. There's hope there. Madness may prove our greatest tool when those of the 20th century fail us. The way through lies within those hidden places made of dreams. As above, so below. What's next for me? Because I know this question's coming. Well, I'm currently in the trenches, meeting those most in need, counseling and community mental health. Next comes my PhD, marrying depth psychological with the clinical, bringing my myth making and my truth telling to the forefront of what's to come. And that's what I have for you all tonight. Thank you so much for being here. And I will be taking questions, I suppose. Look at me, I did it.
Okay, so you're welcome to either raise your hand. Well, I guess since we have two screens, we need to do the Zoom hand raise.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh, all right, Margaret, jump in here.
You know, I was taking notes as you were talking, so I actually have two questions, but I'm going to start with just one, and that is the practical. Where and how do you find the courage to continue to step out and speak on topics that may be seen as taboo? So as you leave school and go into the real world, what do you do to gain the courage? Because it takes a lot of courage to do that.
Well, I could give you the, like my therapist answer, which is, you know, my top 5 human strengths according to the VIA assessment is one of them is courage. So it does take courage. And I think it's necessary. And that's why I wanted to share my personal story as part of this, because it's so important to me and what I experienced. And I see it and I hear it in the world, not on everything, like I said, from that individual to that macrocosmic level. And if I can get the courage to say and speak, then if one person can hear me and that changes, or it plants a seed that grows into fruit, then that's worth it to me. And if it means, you know, all the negative things that pour my way swimming upstream, I can handle it. I know I can do it. And I'm not alone. That's the other thing. All right, Lynn.
Well, as always, such tremendous beauty and power. I'm Jacob's advisor, and we had this conversation before he came in, and it was a conversation of tremendous beauty and power and promise. And I was so excited, you know, about who you were being and becoming and what would happen for this work. And, you know, and I think always about being of service and to be willing to be forced, really, but then to choose to go into the deepest depths. It takes courage, but it also is the only way to be with others who need that in therapy. And some therapists can't, and they're always kind of darting away. They come close and they dart away, and they terrify their clients, as you know. They tell their clients, don't go there. And it's the worst thing you can do to someone. So, you know, I've been so joyful from the beginning watching this and to see it in this gorgeous culmination and to know what you're doing, you know. And like I said, I think so much about the service, about the peace that you give to people just from the look in your eye that you're willing and able and encouraging them to go there with you, that you're with them and you're with that darkness, and then you go through it and you transform together into whatever it is they'll become. And, you know, that's what people search for in our eyes. And I'm just, I don't know, I'm just thrilled. So I'll stop talking because I could go on and on, but bless you, my dear.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you so much. All right, looks like Sarah Beth, you're next on the list.
Wow. I thank you for sharing your story and being vulnerable as you do. And I thought as you were talking about how we use metaphor to illuminate what is between two. And that is what you've talked about, this journey, and what you're doing, and how you jumped into your sight experience and immediately got an opportunity because of your gifts. And I'm excited for you, and I wish you congratulations. Thank you for sharing this project.
Thank you, Sarah Beth.
Yeah.
All right. You know, one thing I forgot, I'm going to drop a little information in the chat too. So I will be calling, I'll call on you in just a second, Miss Erin. But I just wanted to give my massive shout out to Fredric Madison, who's here in the audience. I see you, you're in the shadows. But I just wanted to pop that in there. So a little information on the, what started this was meeting this man and the work that he does. So really a lot of love there. So anyone who's curious, check it out. Curiosity. All right, Erin. It's good to see your face, by the way.
Hi, Jake. Good to see you. Congratulations. I just wanted to comment. I really love how you brought mythos into this, because as you spoke about, being in those darker parts of the human experience can feel really isolating and really, really lonely. But bringing it back to mythos, I mean, these are things that people have been grappling with for millennia. And so bringing it back to that really was a stark example of how this is part of the human experience. It's not something scary or new or bad. It's something that's been with us always. And so I really appreciate you bringing mythos and legend back into this.
Thank you so much. Perfect. All right, Randy.
Yeah, kind of along those same lines. I just really appreciated your poetic voice. It's so rare these days to hear the poetic voice. And so to get a full 45 minutes of poetic voice, I knew I was there when I kept thinking, oh, that's really, I should write that down. But then the next little gem would drop and I would forget and then I just had to sort of surrender to the fact that poetry is just working on my soul in ways that I can't understand, and I'm just going to have to let it go. Although I would like a copy of your paper, but it reminded me of just how rare the poetic voice is these days, and looking at what's happening to education in America and really globally, with everything on STEMs and doctors and lawyers and that kind of stuff, and literary departments atrophying, and it's just such a statement about the health of our culture, that the poetic voice is so rare, and yet when we hear it, it's so healing. In fact, is exactly the kind of healing that's needed right now for the human species. Which brings me to my second point. Your initiation into Hades is the same initiation that the human species is going through right now. And so, since it's true of therapy that you can't take anyone more deep than you yourself have already been, it makes you a particular kind of healer for humanity as a whole. And so while you're in the trenches with these individuals, they will be teaching you about what's happening in this larger space. And I hope that you will find the language to enter into that larger space and share what you're learning from your encounters in Hades, because honestly, we're living by a small thread, as Jung said. And that single thread is the human psyche. And you now are in possession of a language that can be a healing balm for this historical moment that we're in. And so I salute you for that and appreciate what you're doing. And I say, go for it. Thank you.
Means a lot, Randy. Thank you. Thank you so much. Say, ooh, is that, oh, mom, do you not know how to do, are you just waving or you want to say something? You have to unmute yourself, silly. We'll come back to Tina Harris. Margaret, do you have any questions?
The host can unmute her.
I will.
Yay, thank you. I just wanted to say how incredibly proud I am of Jake and standing beside him this whole journey. I knew he had it in him from the day he was born. I knew he was born to do something beautiful and above and beyond. And he is doing it. And I am going to stand beside him the whole way and cheering him on. Congratulations, Jake.
I love you, Mama. Mwah. All right, Mama, or Mama, Margaret, my other Mama.
You can call me Mama too. Okay. So you and I have had many conversations because I definitely feel like we're standing side by side as I integrate much of the unseen and the soul into business and what I'm doing with my business. And so I'm wondering if you can, with your poetic way, paint a bit of a picture for how you see this, or what you envision ideally as integrating this work into the world now. If there's something you envision, or if not, that's okay. But I just wondered if there is an idea that you have about the how behind this. If that makes sense.
That's an interesting one. You know, that's one of the things that really is on the forefront of what is to come for me, is what's next. Is I need to continue kind of growing my consciousness to try and do exactly that. And I think it ties directly into the community, is really being with others. And I think the echo of the pandemic is going to follow us for a long time. And more than ever, we need to be with, but we also need to be with and have those difficult conversations. And that's what I mean by inviting the soul into the room, is bring that with you. And whether it's just you and one other person, or it's you and a group, it's like the telephone game. The more we spread, you know, this deep, meaningful experience, I think it can go so far. So I think community would be my answer. Building that community with that soul as the center, because in my view, that's already where it is. We're just looking the wrong way. We need to return to that core, pivotal, central piece. Sumner.
Yeah, I want to thank you, Jacob, for this magical, beautiful talk. I'm the brother of Fredric. He's 2 years older than me, although he looks 10 years younger than me. And I just wanted to say a word about him. 50 years ago, he really introduced me to the light of darkness through his poetry 50 years ago, as we were growing up in Washington, D.C. And I was lost as a teenager. And I found that his writing, his poetry really sustained me and pulled me through a lot of personal periods of darkness. I just wanted to acknowledge him and thank you, who I haven't met, though I feel like I've known you for years, as you have moved forward in embracing the darkness to find light. So I think this talk should be seen by not thousands, but millions of people that are struggling across this country and around the world, because you are very inspirational. And I can't thank you enough. This is one of the most beautiful hours that I've spent. Thank you.
Thank you, Sumner. And this is just the beginning for me. All right, any last curiosities? All right.
Jacob, I did want to ask, not as serious as everyone else's. Some of the ways that you were saying stuff, it really reminded me of Natalie Wren, and I was wondering if you had listened to her, because you talk similar to her.
Interesting.
Yeah, but it really struck me, because you guys have that same poetic voice that like gets very non-serious very quickly and goes right back into emotional depth.
That sounds about, yeah, that's kind of you had to put like a description under my name, that's probably what you should throw on there. Be warned. Natalie Wren, you said?
Yes, commonly known as ContraPoints.
Interesting. I'll look it up. Thank you for that.
Okay, well, if there are no more comments or reflections or questions, last chance. Let's give our applause. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. And
you.
I'll end with, I love every single one of you because that's what it's all about. I talk about death and the underworld, all the scary stuff, but I love you, and it's all about that love.
And we love you.
Mwah!
Congratulations, Jacob. That was
Yeah.
amazing.
Thank you, Cece. I wouldn't be here without you.
I'm very proud of you. Such important work.
More to come.
Aha. Oh, well, thank you everyone for being here.